Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the first episode of Zurich's Risk to Resilience, a series that follows Zurich sustainability engagements across the world, tracking the key climate moments that we observe. Our aim is to bring Zurich leaders and external experts together to explore the anticipation of climate risks and how we build resilience. Now, without further ado, today our first episode is on planning power for the AI economy. AI is driving one of the fastest surges in electricity demand in decades, and data centers are scaling at unprecedented speed. And the question no longer is, will that demand continue to grow, but rather will energy systems be able to absorb that growth without increasing emissions and systemic risk?
Thank you so much, Pauline. Thank you, Zurich Insurance, for the invitation to be here today. My name is Lindsay Hall, and I am the head of the Sustainability Research Lab at S&P Global, where I also host the All Things Sustainable podcast. You've just heard our theme music, which if you're a listener, you might recognize. And if you're not a listener, you can subscribe and listen anywhere you get your podcasts. And I'm really excited that we are the official podcast of this inaugural Climate Week Zurich. I am also really thrilled to be sitting down with an amazing panel to talk through some really important topics today for this conversation. In my role and in my podcast interviews, one of the main questions that I hear, one of the main trends that we cover is how do you balance the immediate needs like energy security and availability and rising demand from AI with the longer term scientific realities of climate change and nature loss. So that's what we're going to be talking about with our excellent panelists today, and I'm going to invite them to come on up and join me, please. So we will be hearing from Dr. Anas Abu Hamed, who is a scientist and entrepreneur with H2Go Power, Adam Elman, who's Sustainability Director at Google, your very own Emmanuel Matika, who is Global Head of Sustainable Energy at Zurich Resilience Solutions, and Cecilia Tam, who is Head of the Energy Unit at the IEA. Thank you all for sitting down with me today, and really looking forward to this conversation. Cecilia, if we could start with you for some scene setting, can you offer some high-level perspective on how the IEA is thinking about the energy system? What are you seeing in terms of trends in demand?
Thanks very much, Lindsay. So at the IEA, we've recently started doing quite a lot of analysis on the impacts of AI on energy and energy on AI. And this started last year with a major report that we released on some of the findings that developments in technology and AI in particular was going to have and is having on the energy sector. And just recently, we've provided an update because it is an extremely fast-moving area. Technology innovation is really driving the space, both in terms of what is happening amongst AI firms, but also how companies, the energy sector, are really responding. So just to share with you some key numbers in terms of what we're seeing. Energy demand last year from data centers rose about 20% year on year. But if we look at AI-focused data centers, that percentage actually increases to 50%. And what's quite important to highlight is that traditional data centers and AI data centers operate very differently, and they're really creating new challenges for the market. So a traditional data center consumes power reasonably stably, whereas what we've seen for AI data centers is that fluctuations in power consumption in just a second can vary up to about 50%. And this is really calling for more investments into stabilizing the grid and for frequency regulation. And one of the things we did in the major report that we released last year was really try to unpack this question of how rapidly or how much electricity will data centers, AI lead to? And it's a very difficult question to answer. But our base case scenario really sees that energy from data centers over the next 5 years, so to 2030, could roughly double over that time period. If we look at energy from AI-specific data centers, we're anticipating that under our base case scenario, that could triple by the end of this decade. Now, if we look at what this means for spending for energy related to AI usage, we anticipate that over that period, we would need to increase investments in the energy sector, primarily for power, for somewhere between $500 billion and $1 trillion. So that sounds like quite a big number out to 2030. But if you look at over that same period of time, how much the world will spend on energy overall, that's roughly $18 trillion. We've seen some really interesting trends over the last year in terms of tech companies trying to secure power and low carbon power sources with big increases and developments in renewed interest in nuclear power, both in expanding or extending lifetime of existing operators, and also for developing and investing in small and modular reactors. And then more recently, we've also seen a big jump in the demand and orders for gas turbines, really led by AI companies looking to source more on-site power demand, including from gas-fired power plants.
Thank you for setting the scene so effectively. And yes, there were a lot of really compelling numbers in there about tripling of demand and huge investment number that's needed. Let me jump to you, Adam, just to bring in the Google perspective here. How do you respond to what you're hearing from this IEA perspective? How does this gel with how you're thinking about building out to meet the growing demand from AI for energy?
No, thank you. Good morning, and thank you, Zurich, for hosting this important conversation. Look, I think the numbers for the IEA are hugely important, and we're a partner with the IEA in helping to make sure the right numbers are out there. Certainly, as you've heard, sort of the power demand for AI infrastructure and data centers is growing, as the opportunity for industry and for science and health and education sort of grows. I think what's really interesting though is you've had whilst it's growing, data centers around the world, all data centers, which AI is a fraction, is about, I think it's 1.5% to 2% of energy demand. And whilst it's growing, and it's certainly growing, I think it's only sort of 1/10 of the growth. So you've still got a growth coming from industry, heating, cooling, transportation. So we're certainly growing, but in perspective of entire industries that are looking to electrify, which clearly is a huge part of sort of decarbonisation. Look, from a Google perspective, we've been focused on this for a long time, and the sort of the energy supply side is really important, but the first thing we think about is efficiency. Obviously, the cleanest energy you use is the energy you don't use. And we're very privileged. We're a full stack player, so we can look at every part of our operation, right down to the hardware, the infrastructure itself. So, we develop our own processors, our own TPUs, tensor processing units. Those are the processors that are powering AI. Our latest processor, which is Ironwood, is 30 times more power efficient than our first one in 2018. So there's a lot we can do in terms of the infrastructure. In fact, Google data centers are some of the most energy efficient in the world. To put it in perspective, compared to 5 years ago, we have almost 6 times as much compute power for the same amount of energy. So we're really good at driving efficiency. By the way, it's a huge cost for us. It's good for business as well as being good for the planet. We also focus on the models themselves. So if you've heard of sort of Gemini, which is our sort of core foundational model, that continues to get more and more efficient. Over a 12-month period, when we look at sort of a median text prompt, it's 33 times more power efficient and 44x more energy efficient, so more carbon efficient. So the infrastructure is getting more efficient, the model's getting more efficient. And then, of course, we need to look at the energy that's powering our data centers.
Thank you. Can I dig in a little bit more just to understand how is Google balancing its sustainability goals, what those goals look like with the growing demand? Like, how are you making sure that the sustainability goals are not lost in the shuffle?
Yeah. And look, this is not easy. We're growing very fast. And again, the grid, I don't need to tell this audience, the grid wasn't designed for, the current needs. But the investments we're making are helping us stay ahead of this. In 2024, 8 gigawatts worth of new clean energy capacity, which is significantly more than we actually need. So we're actually trying not just to keep up, we're getting ahead of our demands. Again, in 2024, our energy use grew, electricity use grew 27%, but our data center emissions reduced 12%. So this is not easy by any means, but it's through innovation, it's through investment, it's through partnership with the energy sector, with other players, right across the piece.
Thank you. You talked about the importance of sort of building something right from the start.
Yep.
And I think that's, Emmanuel, maybe where we could bring you in. I mean, how are you thinking about the need to design something in the right way, right from the start?
So in the last 5 years, we provided coverage, so risk transfer solution coverage to over 500 projects with a total insured value of about $350 billion in the US alone. And in the last year alone, we provided coverage to about 200 projects, data center projects, at a total insured value of $150 billion. So really the sector has, as the insurance sector as a whole, has stepped out to provide that coverage. But I sit alongside the underwriters that do that. I sit where I look at upstream, right? Looking at, when I look at all this, it's how do we scale? We scale by really understanding the risk, right? So understanding what fails, how it fails, and how much it costs actually to recover when things fail, right? So this means that we have, when we have that clarity on risk, that we provide the mitigations, the adaptations very early on at design stage, right? So it means that from very early design, we understand the system, how the asset itself and the surrounding system, how robust it is to withstand shocks, right? So it could be a nat cat exposure, could be extreme weather events. All those aspects could be systemic issues there that the asset itself and the system around it must be able to absorb those shocks. Then you're looking at, you need to design it in such a way that you have redundancy within the system, that you eliminate all those single point of failures. And if you're looking at power supply, for example, that you're able to look at multiple supply points for your power, for your cooling, the same thing. So understanding all that through the design phase, think about how that will play out in the construction phase, in the commissioning phase, into operation, right? So you understand all that, then we put in place there, you need to have the resourcefulness, right? You need to be able to have the skilled manpower, labor force that understands how data centers work, that have got the experience then to really track potential issues, anticipate those issues, perhaps aided by AI to anticipate those issues, and put in place remote condition monitoring, right? Condition-based maintenance that help to anticipate issues much earlier, and put in the right mitigations in there, right? So being able to do that at an early stage is key for us, right? So we support our customers from very early stage that we can put those mitigations.
So starting off with that really early stage system perspective. And Anas, I'd like to turn to you because I'd like to understand from an energy system perspective, where do you see this rapid data center build out putting the most strain on grids and low carbon power systems?
Thanks for having me first, and thank you for bringing me last to the conversation, because I'd really like to build on what's already been said here. If we want to look at the numbers, and these are stolen numbers from IAE reports, but I was told that if you confess to stealing data and say who's the source, that's fine. I mean, in 2024, and that's not contradictory to any numbers that's been shared already. The global electricity consumption that was derived explicitly by usage of data centers was around 415 terawatt hours. Do you approve? And that's around the consumption of Italy as a country. Now, by 2030, which is by the end of this decade, it's going to double or exceed the double by a little bit to around 950 terawatt hours. Mind you, the end of the decade is 4 years, 3.5 years, we're in May, away. So there's a bit of a contradiction between the growth of that demand and our physical capability to keep up with that growth, because we are driven by the applications and what AI pace is bringing to our world. So these are not infrastructure curves. These are rocket trajectories. And I think we really should pay attention to the opportunities that could come out of this, as well as feeling that uncertainties here might kind of clash with how we think about insuring things. We could also redesign things that are insurable and guarantee opportunities for further growth. Now, where does the strain get stuck? I would say in 3 places already been mentioned. First is the capacity, the clash between the physical limitations and how fast AI moves. Connection queues would take about a decade. We're talking about by the end of the decade, how we're going to double our demand. I mean, I think that clash is significant. Second one is the concentration. If we're spreading the concentration across national grid, if we have a problem, the problem is spread across. But if we concentrate where data centers and the power around them could actually exist, we might be able to solve solutions in local AI zones, and that is an opportunity to look at. And the third point, it's been mentioned as flexibility, but because I want to highlight the problem, I would call it inflexibility. Data centers run flat, 24/7. That's the exact opposite of what renewable grid demand would need. But if we use these 3 points as data points that allow us to redesign a system from a system perspective, inflexibility becomes flexibility. And we've already, with technology and innovation, we've already, solved it with peak shaving, storage on site, and demand response solutions. So that kind of that was a catalyst to create a solution which we have partially solved, and the solution is also the adoption of the solution is growing. Second point, in terms of concentration, concentration could become co-location, where integrated energy zones, where heat networks, grids, and industrial clusters would actually share the same backbone. And that means that we could look at the waste heat created in mass as an opportunity to actually turn waste into value. And that's not something that we've done much of so far. And I think this is a massive opportunity to be looking at, where we can take waste heat and turn it into value across. If we start from London has the ability only from waste heat that is recoverable coming from data centers to heat about 500,000 homes. Without additional investments. This is infrastructure that exists, demand that exists, waste heat that exists. What's missing is the policy that enables connecting the dots together to put together a functional solution that can be used.
I love this focus on the opportunity side of things. Emmanuel, did you have something you wanted to add here?
So I was going to say, from an engineering point of view, the initial phase has been about optimizing the operation of the data center as an asset, almost standalone, right? And now I think we need to move more to be able to think about how we harness the waste heat. We need to think in a system kind of concept, right? So thinking not just the data center, thinking about the entire electricity grid on which actually the data center depends, and the communities where it's located. When you do that, you start seeing the ability to connect those dots, right? So you start seeing could be waste heat, could be renewables. So the demand signal that you're getting from the data center is good for renewables, but actually when you bring renewables on the grid, because of their nature, you bring another layer of risk. So you make the risk more complex than it was before. But if you take that as a design decision from day one, you can fit that in. You can ensure that the waste heat is put in. You can ensure that data centers are designed with a flexible load management system.
What do you think, Adam? Do you agree with that?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that the sort of heat story is a really important one. I'm just back from Finland actually a few weeks ago. So our data center in Hamina there, we've partnered with Hamina Energy, the local operator. We give them the heat from our data centers for free. It will cover about 80% of the needs for about 2,000 homes there. Because of the work we've done on clean energy, that's 97% carbon-free heat. So it's a great story. We're building our data centers heat recovery ready. Our latest data center in Germany will be doing the same. But actually, this is where there's a sort of bigger story, which is there is only so much we as a data center operator, hyperscaler can do. You need the right infrastructure, the right policy framework. So we can build a data center that's heat recovery ready, but if there isn't an off-taker and the infrastructure there, then it's not getting used. So again, this is why partnering with others, having the right policy frameworks in place is so important. So we want to be good grid citizens, we want to be good neighbours, and we're doing as much as we can do, but in many instances, there's only so much we can do and we need that bigger system change.
You talked about policy, as did Anas, and maybe Cecilia, I can bring you back in here because the IEA spends a lot of time talking to regulators and policymakers. What concerns do you hear from them? What conversations are you having?
I think there's a variety of things. One is really about the outlook for overall energy demand growth and how that's going to be met in a secure and sustainable way. As I mentioned in my first intervention, the exact growth is hard to forecast because the technology and innovation is evolving so rapidly. So a lot of electricity regulators, countries, are concerned about overbuilding if the power demand does not materialize. Today, we talk a lot about the physical bottlenecks that are emerging from the very rapid growth today in electricity consumption, and people are building a lot of power, both on site and to meet this growing demand. But we also need to be aware that there are a number of other physical bottlenecks that are in the system in terms of being able to source and supply quickly the electrical equipment. And two really come to mind. One, the delivery times for transformers right now vary between 2 and 3 years or more. Gas turbines delivery right now is about 5 years. And as already mentioned about the long connection queues, which can vary between 5 to 10 years. And policymakers and regulators are starting to take action to address these bottlenecks, including looking at reforms to connection procedures and wait times. There's also a lot of push back around public sentiment because of all of these uncertainties, unknowns of whether this big boost in electricity demand coming from data centers is causing electricity prices to spike. And obviously, under current situations, affordability is top on the mind of agendas of governments.
Thank you. You talked about some of the community implications for data center build out. So Adam, maybe I can turn to you to ask just what are you hearing in terms of community pushback? How are you thinking about working with communities?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an absolutely important factor in terms of where we're growing. I mean, obviously, data centers come with lots of benefits. You've got the sort of the workforce benefit, the sort of local economic benefits in terms of taxes and property and all those sorts of things. And you've got a mix around the world. There are certain places in the world that are very welcoming. There are others that have concerns. That's both from policymakers, that's from local communities. we have to think about everything from nature and biodiversity to water. So, some of our data centers are air cooled, others, where it's appropriate, are water cooled. Our data center in Belgium actually uses canal water, and actually we return it back to the canal cleaner than we sort of intake it. But then there's all the other things we do in terms of, and the things you'd expect us to do in terms of volunteering, local investments. In Denmark, we've partnered with the local technical college. So they are training up the data center operators of the future.
This is near and dear to my heart. I grew up in Northern Virginia, which is now like data center alley. So Emmanuel, please go ahead.
No, I was going to say in terms of training and working with the local communities, because remember, if you go back 10, 15 years ago in the wind industry, used to find it difficult to find the right skill set of people. In some countries, it was a little bit easier because people were moving from the oil and gas, for example, to going to offshore wind. But the data center is the same now. What we are seeing, actually, we've looked at about 25 major outages of data center in the last 10 years. And 80% of those were caused by electrical faults, power cooling issues. And some of those, actually, some of the worst ones were caused by human factors. So in some cases, in commissioning phase, we had a case in Ireland where in commissioning phase, because of the inexperience of the personnel there, no fault of the design or the technology, but actually as you put the different systems and subsystems together under time pressure and with an experienced workforce, we had a major delay and quite significant cost. So it's important actually as we build out data centers that watch out for those compressed timescales. But actually we've got the right people in place. We're working with the local community to train the right people, get them in early so they actually learn and contribute positively to the growth.
Thank you. I'd like to end this conversation on a forward-looking note and ask all of our panelists, maybe Anas, I can start with you. But as we look ahead, what do you think is the single power system planning or investment decision that we can make today that will determine whether an AI-driven economy ultimately strengthens long-term resilience in the coming decades?
If I had to pick one, I'd say that if we just reframed data centers and the world around them that will power them and make them work from a real estate world to a facilitator or a national energy infrastructure framework, I think we could be moving from creating problems to creating solutions and facilitating transition to a healthier energy system that we could live with. What that means is, like, from a single frame, we could bring change to those who apply for permits. If they bring solutions with them, including on-site storage, taking care of how they're going to put renewable energy in the ground. You'll do like a natural filtration to the projects that won't work in terms of their negative impact on climate, and that is good business to your wards. In addition to that, if we were able to kind of spot big problems like heat reuse, what makes communities not only involved in terms of we've created job at the construction phase, but long term, how are we able to lower the heating prices for them, and how are we going to lower the prices of energy for them? That is like a gain for the community. So you'll have less pushback and more engagement. So taking a problem and turning it around into a solution.
I really like that. Okay, thank you. How about same question to you, Adam?
Two very quick answers. I think one we've just touched on a lot, which is collaboration, right? Doesn't matter how big you are or where you sit in the system. This is going to require a collaboration from industry to policymakers to communities to investors to startups. So how do we drive that collaboration? On the other side of the fence, I'm the Google guy, so I think AI is a key part of the solution. It's not the only part of it, but it's a key part of it. And I think within that, data is really, really, really key. There are huge amounts of hidden data sets that need to be out there so that innovators, AI companies, grids and operators and what have you can better plan for the future.
Thank you. Emmanuel, what do you think?
So we need to be deliberate from design stage that we have resilience by design embedded in how we build out data centers. That means we ensure that the data center itself, the system supporting the data center is robust. We have the redundancy in the system, that we have the real-time sensors that can give us the data predictive analytics that can help us to anticipate where the issues are going to be and put in the measures in place. And lastly, that we're able to recover quickly, that we have the right people in place, trained people. You're doing a good thing in making sure that you've got a lot of people trained there, that we do more of that, right? If we do that, we embed it from the start, it means that we will secure insurability from our point of view. If you secure insurability, you unlock bankability, and that's how you scale data centers.
That's a great point. And last but not least, Cecilia.
It's hard to go last because Adam took mine, but I will come up with something different. I think picking up on what Emmanuel mentioned around systems planning. We often think of systems planning in siloed sectors. And I think what we need to start doing is more effectively planning as a broad system overall, not thinking only just about energy system planning or system planning for the IT or AI industry, but looking at how these interconnected parts of the economy can be more effectively planned, how we can optimize for costs and investment, and for siting. Because if we can foresee a lot of these bottlenecks, we can address these problems before they occur.
Fantastic. Okay, so some really good forward-looking solutions that all of our panelists have offered. Thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you to our audience. And we hope you've enjoyed this very first episode of Zurich Talks.